Good morning, members. I call Committee of the Whole on Bill 44, Housing Statutes, Residential Development Amendment Act 2023 to order. Shall Clause 15 pass? Oh, recognizing the member for Kamloops North Thompson.
Thank you. And I'm just waiting to see if my colleague might also have some questions, but just one following question on Clause 15. We were talking about yesterday. So the rules are going to be set out. This is giving the minister the ability to do that. Will these provisions also apply to bare land condos? So it's going to be very prescriptive and directive to municipalities what they can or cannot allow on single-family lots, but on bare land condo lots, you could have a case where a strata doesn't want it, someone wants to on their bare land. Will that be captured by this as well, or will those be status quo?
Recognizing Minister of Housing.
Thank you. Thanks to the member for the question. Only if it's zoned for single family or duplex zoning.
Shall Clause 15 pass? Oh, recognizing the member for Parkville Quantico.
Thank you, Chair. The policy guidelines that are the power that's granted to the minister under this clause, have those guidelines been developed yet?
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. We canvassed this yesterday, so asked and answered.
Member.
Thank you, Chair. We discussed extensively the design of the buildings. What I'm wondering is the policy guidelines specifically for developing and adopting a municipal government, the policy and process that they develop and move forward the rezoning under 41.3. I'm just wondering if that guideline has been developed yet.
Minister.
Respectfully asked and answered yesterday a couple times.
Member.
Thank you, Chair. I'll have to go back through Hansard. I don't believe that specific clause. I know we've discussed that this particular clause in length, but the process itself, the questions that I've received from planners and local elected officials in my community, it still remains ambiguous. I understand the minister would like to move forward quickly on this, and I will try to get through this as quickly as I can. There are 353 mentions of minister in the Local Government Act. Can the minister provide the number of times that a minister has been referenced that is not the Minister of Municipal Affairs, where that minister has not been specifically identified?
Minister.
We're unable to provide that number to him right now.
Member.
This clause grants a power to the minister. Which minister is responsible for that?
Minister.
Ledge Council makes that public once the bill has royal assent.
Member.
Thank you, Chair. I'm under the impression that as legislators we draft the law. I'm just wondering how Ledge Council makes it public which minister under this clause when it says the minister. How is that made public?
Minister.
Thank you. The intention is this section to be for the Ministry of Housing, but it is published with legislation in BC laws.
Member.
Thank you, Chair. I understand that process. Through the Local Government Act, though, generally, when a minister is referenced, it is implying the minister responsible for the governance of the act. Otherwise, it is specifically identified as a minister responsible for the School Act, the Heritage Conservation Act, the Right to Farm Act, the Transportation Act, the Land Act. Generally, when additions are made to the Local Government Act, specific to a minister, it identifies which minister will be responsible. This particular clause just says the minister, and I'm just seeking clarity as to how that will be interpreted in the future. Could a future government, could any minister take this new power?
Minister.
We canvassed this at length yesterday. It's Minister of Housing or whoever is responsible for the Ministry of Housing.
Recognizing the third-party House Leader.
Does the minister want to take the opportunity to amend this clause to reflect similar language so it's consistent throughout the Local Government Act?
Minister.
We're not bringing forward an amendment at this time.
Member.
So, thank you. Through you to the minister. So then, basically, the minister is giving the only remedy to understand which minister is being referred to here, because there's an assumption that we can have in this that because we're having a conversation with the Minister of Housing, but it might be 8 months, 12 months, 24 months, 36 months down the road where that clarity has not been sorted out. So they'll have to go back to Hansard to find out that actually what this law that the minister is wanting us to pass is referring to a minister that's unnamed in the law.
Minister.
I already answered this question, Chair. It'll be published once it gets royal assent. It gets published in BC Law's books.
Shall Clause 15 pass?
Aye.
So ordered. Division has been called. Members, before restating the question, I remind all members that only the permanent members of Section A or their authorized substitutes may vote. The question is, shall Clause 15 pass? Those voting aye, please rise or otherwise indicate. You may be seated. Those voting nay, please rise or otherwise indicate. You may be seated. Clerk?
Those voting aye, Kalon, Sharma, Heyman, Anderson, Bailey, Donnelly, Bear, Begg, 8. Those voting nay, Millibar, Watt, Sturdy, Olson, Badman, Walker, 6.
The Clause 15 carries. Huh? Yeah. Shall Clause 16 pass? Recognizing the member for West Vancouver Capilano. Member, I think you're muted. We'll call a quick 2-minute recess so we can solve a technical difficulty. Go ahead, member for West Vancouver Capilano.
Oh, you can hear me now. Okay, thank you. My apologies for that new computer here today. So clause 16 is extending the requirement for the housing needs reports to 5 and 20 years. So my question to the minister is, how was 20 years chosen as a timeline? Why wasn't that 15 years or 30 years? What was the basis of that?
Minister.
Thanks to the member for the question, and this was canvassed at great lengths early on, which is that it aligns with good planning practices. It was well agreed on by everyone that we talked to about good planning, and it aligns with what the regional growth strategies are right now. They go off of 20 years as well.
Shall Clause 16? Oh, go ahead, member.
Thank you to the minister for that. When considering this, I would like to know what the minister and what the ministry is thinking in terms of what are the expectations of government on housing in BC for the next 20 years?
Minister.
Thank you. In the context of this legislation, our expectation is, our understanding will be that housing needs reports will be done based on that. Again, we canvassed this I believe it was last week. The CMHC has their kind of targets from the top level that they provide, but we believe that it's going to be more effective if local governments do their analysis for 20 years, and because it's standardized, we'll be able to get a good sense from the ground up of what the need will be over 20 years.
Recognizing a third-party house leader.
So the CMHC sets the high-level target, and then the local governments have to figure out how to achieve that locally. How is that connected regionally, sub-regionally, and across the province?
Minister.
It's just, my previous answer was about what CMHC does at a global scale. For example, the consultant that we've got, Urban Matters, who did the work for Sydney and Central Saanich, they would do their analysis, or whoever comes in to do their analysis for Housing Needs Report would do a projection for the local government based on BC Stats, Stats Canada, all the information that's made public, so that they can do their planning for 20 years.
Member.
The District of Central Saanich has traditionally had a target in their official community plan for 1% growth rate annually. So an increase. Now, I don't believe that they've met that. I don't think that they've hit that 1% growth rate. But I guess what I'm trying to understand is, it seems like from the minister's answer, they can still set that as their target, 1%, and then they have to go about figuring that out, because it's hard to understand how that links with the global numbers, considering each municipality does their work kind of in a microcosm on their own.
Minister.
Thank you. Again, there's no connection between the CMHC number. Local governments will be able to do their planning based on their 20-year number, based on BC Stats and all the data that they have available to them.
Member.
So, can a community set it at 0 then? I mean, the minister is painting a picture that it goes from the ground up. So the minister says that the municipality says our target for the next 20 years is 0% growth, and we're going to build a housing needs assessment report around that. I'm struggling to understand how it is that all of these pieces of data and pieces of information link in order for that number. Sydney's different. They've not set a specific number that they want to target to reach. At least I couldn't find it in their report. So I'm just wondering how all of the pieces of information link to then inform the community about what their 20-year target is.
Minister.
Yeah, thanks to the member for the question. There's no way a community could have 0%, and the housing needs reports are based on all the metrics that we canvassed yesterday, and based off of BC Stats of what the projection of population growth are in each community.
Member.
So BC Stats breaks down what the number of, or the potential growth for each community in the province, or let's just say each community that's identified in the 85 currently. BC Stats has a number by which they need to grow in the next 20 years. That number's available?
Minister.
Thank you. So BC Stats is one part of it. We canvassed at great lengths the other components, the 5 components that they have to consider in making their housing needs reports. Many of the companies that do this work, consultants that are brought in, now will be able to do it in a standardized way. And when we collect that information, we'll be able to see what the needs are from the grassroots up.
Member.
So I recognize that we've canvassed this pretty extensively. The part that we canvassed extensively was that the communities have already identified a growth rate. As I said yesterday, the official community plan is done. They've identified a growth rate. They've identified the areas in geography as to where that growth rate should be targeted for. They've designated lands in order to accommodate that growth rate. I have yet to have it made clear to me how it is that connects, how Central Saanich connects with Saanich, connects with Victoria, connects with the region of the capital region, how the capital region connects with the lower mainland and the most densely populated parts of this province, and how Kamloops and Kelowna and Prince George fit in, and how if we don't have an overall targeted growth rate, and no sort of coordinated determination as to where we want those people to go, I'm not sure how it is that these communities are supposed to come up with what their portion of it needs to be. Because they're all just working, like I said, in a microcosm to one another. Yes, we've got these 5 guidelines, but the problem is that the minister's just suggested there's no linkage between them other than some BC stats, some Stats Canada data.
Minister.
Thank you. I appreciate, certainly for me and maybe for other members, going in and figuring out how the consultants come and model between 10 and 20 years. We could be here for 10 and 20 years. There is expertise. Most communities, when they get a housing needs report, the member highlighted Central Saanich, there is expertise to help communities model 20 years out based on the data that is available, and that's what we're saying with this, is we are making it standardized so that all communities are planning for 20 years out.
Member.
So, I mean, that's essentially, there's a timeline now that the municipalities have, the ones that have just completed their official community planning processes, they've got their piece done, they got a bylaw, freshly updated, as I was mentioning yesterday, has their targets. But I don't know that the target that the community has set is a target that has come from other information other than the community in past official community plans has said we're going to grow about 1% per year. That was the number when the official community plan was being approved right before the November 2008 municipal election that I got elected to the council in. They approved the last meeting before that election. They approved the official community plan. And in that was, we're going to grow at about 1% per year. And then they've actually built their plan to that number. So what I'm wondering is, and you know, I think that because we don't have it, I mean, the minister can be frustrated that he has to explain this, but because we don't have it in front of us, because he hasn't provided it to our colleagues at local government, he has to understand that he is at least sharing frustration with hundreds and hundreds of other local government people who are trying to understand what it is that he is. So maybe he can walk us through and have it on the record so it's there, what the intention is behind the process for this from the beginning all the way through to the end of coming up with the housing needs and how that informs the official community planning process. Because it sounds like what the minister is suggesting is backwards from what's happened in Central Saanich traditionally, and I'm just wondering how they, as one example, but others, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's not opposite from what Central Saanich has done. That would be good information too. It would help me understand the process, rather than just saying, I've talked a lot about this, I don't want to talk about it anymore, let's move on to a different section, is the feeling that I'm getting with this. But the reality is that I think it's worthwhile for the minister to articulate what it is his intention is, so that at least people know before we pass this bill rather than after the fact.
Minister.
Thank you, Chair. There's a few things there. I mean, the point I was making is that a lot of these questions are questions that we've canvassed. We're canvassing the same questions over and over again. That was the point I was trying to make to the member. BC, I can't speak to what happened on council when the member was there can't remember the year, whenever it was. The growth rate in population in BC is 3%. Planners who are professionals at this understand what it means to plan for 5 years to 10 years to 20 years. They'll be able to now have certainty that they're planning for 20 years out. And that's what this clause does. This clause says that communities will plan their housing needs reports for 20 years out. That's what we're saying in this legislation. Planners understand what that means. It's part of best practice. It's already happening. This is not something new. It's happening in regional districts when they plan their growth plans. And now what it does is it aligns it across the province. So I mean, I can continue to answer that question as many times as the members like to raise it. But now I see the time has come short, so I move the committee rise, report progress, and ask leave to sit again.
Members, the question is that the committee rise, report progress, and seek leave to sit again. Those in favor indicate aye. Those opposed indicate nay. Motion is carried. The committee stands adjourned.